So let me start by telling you a bit more about myself. And I'm not sharing about myself because I just want you to know me. There are key things that I just want to put out there, but I'm just staying behind my story to say that. So you can keep away my story and take the lessons. That's what is important for me. So I was born in a small town in Central Africa called Cameroon. And so Cameroon it's not a very developed country. Even South Africa is more developed than Cameroon. And so when I was growing up, we were staying in this small plank house, which wasn't really that, I just cannot say it was beautiful, but it was so warm. We loved it. It was family and all the nice things that come together. So one day when I turned, just after my 12th birthday, I was coming back from school. And just as I was approaching, I saw things being thrown out of our home. They were throwing our bags and all our belongings. And so as I approached the house, I could hear someone shouting at my mother, and my two siblings were standing there and confused. So when I got in there, I realized that it was the landlord who was evicting us because my mom was not able to pay the $15 equivalent of rent over a period of 4 months. And so we were thrown into the streets, and for 2 years, we were depending on church members who were hosting us from one home to the other until mom picked up another job in a small plantation. And then we could rent another small plank house. So in the middle of that, in the middle of the shame and guilt and embarrassment of poverty, there was something deep inside me. And that thing was, there is something worth living for. And what I felt was worth living for was beyond my current circumstances at the time. I felt that there was something. And so this is what kept me alive. This is what gave me the strength to keep moving and just continue experiencing the life that we met. But I thought this thing was money. Because when I looked around, I saw other people were wealthy. My classmates came from homes that were better than ours. And I felt like if only I could get money to even afford my own house and stay in a decent place and buy all the nice things that I would love to have, then everything would be fine. I'll just be the happiest person in the world. But through it all, I went to school and got educated and moved from what you call this extreme poverty to the middle class kind of thing in Africa. So I had a couple of decent jobs. We managed to build my mom a better house and all these things. And then it was easy for me. But then I still felt this emptiness. And this was weird because I thought it was really about money. So what is going on now? I'm able to afford this, but there is this vacuum. There is this stress. Things are not really as exciting. I'm not excited anymore about my successes, what's going on. And so that made me to start asking questions. And so when I looked, on one hand, I saw very miserable poor people. And I looked on the other hand, I saw very miserable rich people. And then I realized that there was something more than money. And that which I was living for was beyond everything else. So this thing, which was the purpose of my life, is what I began searching. I searched through religion, I searched through education, I searched through travels, I searched through psychology and everything, because there was this driving force. And in the process of searching, I lost everything. I lost my identity, I lost the money, I lost everything that I lost my relationships, because this became a sort of transformative journey. It's almost like when you are trying to brew alcohol, you have to go through a fermentation process. And this is a very nasty process, right? It doesn't smell nice. So when you're in that process, it feels like it's so ugly because everything is gone. You don't recognize yourself anymore. And in that process, I was very, very fortunate to connect to a lot of people through who I learned new things. And I usually say that I lost the world and gained my soul, because it was in the middle of that nasty process that I found my true authentic self. I realized that there was something more than all what I was excited about, more than these things that were stimulating my sensory perceptions and all these things. And so this is what I wanted to live for. So in that process, I think this is where I found David and Teresa in the process of asking, but what's out there? Who am I and what am I doing here? So when I finally found myself, I found the peace. And this is just something very recent. I found everything that I felt that I needed. Everything that I lost came back to me. And so I spent the rest of my life, as David said, with Kawi Breeze. It's a new organization that I started to help people through my story to understand that there is more to this world. And when you feel within you that there is more than your current circumstances, indeed there is more. And so it's very exciting to have people here who are already on that journey. From the way that you introduce yourselves, I feel that you are all on that journey. And it is this sort of transformation that we need to be the leaders that the world really needs to be transformed. So I started this, there is a course. I just came back from Dubai last month to shoot this course, which is called STEP. And I use my story to guide people from STEP is survival, empowerment, survival, transformation, empowerment, purpose, and prosperity. So this is the way that I moved through my life. And one thing that I really want to talk about are the two things that I had to overcome in order to find that which I call my purpose. Because if you ask me now, are you really living that purpose? Have you found that thing which you feel that you are living for? My answer is yes. I feel that. It's not something that I know mentally. It's an experience, and I can feel that experience. I can feel this love flowing into everything that I do. I can feel this harmony flowing into everything that I do. And then it's no longer about this self. It's about the world. It's about everyone else. So I feel that I'm aligned to that, at least not entirely, but I'm on that path. So there are two things that I had to overcome. The first one was conformity. Now, when you're born in Africa, in cultures that really sort of, they're very strong and somehow very abusive to children and women. So it's not easy to think independently. It's not easy to make certain decisions. And in this culture, communal, the life is communal. You have to be like others or you are ostracized. And so it is very difficult to think independently. So I had to go through this, but I didn't go through this through a fight. I didn't say I want to start a movement. Of course, when we started Apia, it was something like that. It was really about changing the way people see children. It was about transforming humanity through childhood. So through this, this is where I lost my identity, because no one could understand me anymore. I lost friends, I lost everyone. But this process is something which I really would like us to look into. This process of this conformity. Conformity is really one of the things that separates us from our authentic selves. And we grow up like this. We meet parents, we meet adults and teachers, all this kind of people who grow up around us, who came into this world before us. and who had a certain, by virtue of them also coming as blindfolded as we were, they were taught to do things in a certain way. And the people who initiated some of these stories and some of these frames of references through which they learned were also trying to understand this complex world. So they created those things as a way of trying to make meaning out of this very complicated world. And so they passed these things to them and they passed to others, and then it came to us. And so when you live in a place that is so strong in making sure that you live within those frames of references, it's very difficult to be different. And so that brings me to the second one, the fear of being rejected. I had to overcome that because I remember there are people who don't talk to me anymore. They're like, you are possessed. You don't behave like us. Who the hell do you think you are? And I've lost this kind of people in my life, but I've gained so many other supportive relationships. So it's very complicated, because conformity it has its own place. It helps us to put structure. It helps us to have an identity, and these things feel comfortable. And it's just so easy to obey and follow whatever is told to you. We have to be obedient. That's what we are told as children, and just do what the adults say. But the price is you also get disconnected from your intuition. And I like what Jenna said about being connected to your intuition, because it's very hard for you to find that self. It's hard for you to find your authentic self if you don't have a connection to yourself. The intuition, I say, is like the GPS. And the rational mind is the car. You need direction and you need movement. So I found that my intuition has given me direction in life, because the direction comes from feeling. And some of the greatest people, some of the people who have invented some big things in this world will always say they had to use their intuition at some point. So intuition is, for me, one of the things that have helped me to open up to this kind of consciousness that has allowed me to connect with so many people around the world, but also to tap into a new kind of intelligence that will help me to have a different kind of leadership from that which exists in the world. So I just want us to just step back and have a small reflection. Maybe we can think about some of the things that we do that we just do because we want to be accepted. Perhaps it's something we are still doing, or maybe it's something we used to do when we were kids. And as usual, I'll start with myself, and then we can go around just to share. Let's make this a bit we can interact. So when I was a kid, going to church was very compulsory, and I had millions of questions in my mind which I wasn't allowed to ask. And so it became very boring because I felt like no one listens to me. I'm just going to sit there and listen to the preacher, and when it's time to put the offering, that's the only time that I have to express myself, because I'll have to go to the altar and drop my coin. But what about what I have to say? So, and then when we have to eat food, even if I'm hungry, I have to close my eyes and pray. Someone will bring a long prayer. And I didn't like those things, but I just had to do, because my mom was a deaconess, my dad was a deacon. And so you can't, there's no way you can do otherwise. So it took me when I was 17, that's when I started saying to them, no, I think I have questions. And I was bothering everyone else with questions. But this affected me because when I grew up, even much later, I thought I had the shame of not going to church, like there's something wrong. There is food and I just start eating. I'm like, I think there's something wrong here. And it took me a while to actually unprogram that. So, and shame is a very difficult energy. The energy of shame is not good. It's actually one of the things that will repel you from your authentic self. So maybe we can, if anyone, this time I'm not going to ask anyone to speak, but if you feel like you want to share something which perhaps in your past or in your present or near past, whenever, some of the things that you did because you wanted to be accepted or just because you wanted to be obedient, but there were tensions between what you really felt like doing and that which you were doing. Thank you so much for sharing. I think this whole community for me of Lisa, Dave, and Teresa was actually part of my spiritual journey. As a matter of fact, Dave was the first person I saw meditating. I remember when we were in Johannesburg and this guy was just sitting on the floor quiet for like 1 hour. I was like, what's he doing there? That's crazy, just sitting quiet. Can't you do something useful? But later on, I mean, just gradually, and I'm talking about this kind of language, when you meet people, there is a certain energy that comes out of them. And it depends on where you are and how prepared you are. It could be through a book. It could be through just meeting people randomly, just like how I met Teresa online, just randomly. So, but it's not that random. I feel that there's something that drives you to that person. So this is another kind of language which we don't talk about. We speak words, but there's a deeper language. And I really enjoy this idea of just having a few people you really connect with. And yeah, that's what I call my tribe. So is there anyone else? If not, then we can jump into the next practice just before we have a short break. I would like us to go back to the points that we wrote down, the 3 superpowers that we have, and just choose one. Choose one that feels really strong for you. And just have a reflection on that. Like, if this is the superpower, what kind of people in the community have a pain point or a challenge which requires this superpower? What kind of challenges out there can be solved with this superpower? This is, is it clear? Let me just make an example of my own superpower. And this is helping people to find the light in them or find their passion and find their purpose. So the pain point out there is someone who feels lost, who feels that life is meaningless, and they're stressed, they feel drained. So I feel that if my gift is to help this kind of to help people really find their purpose, then these are the kind of people I'll choose. So that's the first question. The first question is, what kind of pain point can your superpower fix? Put it that way. And then just you can reflect a bit further. What is holding you back from going out there and meeting this kind of people? Okay, so it seems like some of the things that really stand on the way from my own experience, some of the two things that stand on the way to really manifesting this authentic self is conformity and the fear of being rejected. And so in this session, I would like us to go a bit deeper into how we can handle this kind of situations. How can we deal with this fear of not being rejected? How can we deal with conformity? And I'm really delighted that all of you here really, you mentioned things that are so aligned to you already know how to figure this out. So I imagine this will just be a conversation to share. For me, the first thing that I would say I have 3, there is self-awareness, there is the inner wisdom that we call intuition. And there is also the third one, learning to deal with challenging situations. For me, these have been the three ways that I've managed to deal with this conformity and intuition, and the conformity and the fear of being rejected. Now, I realize that some of us work with children, and really when we come into this world, there is no manual to tell us how to navigate this complex world. And so we will lean on adults. And now that we are much older, kids are also leaning on us. And so I want to shift the focus now from our relationship with children. So self-awareness is very important. And when we work with children, it is important to be aware of some of the patterns that play out in the way that in the way that we react, or in the way that we respond to these things. When I realized as a teacher, I've actually been teaching for so many years. Whenever I have a challenge with a challenging situation with my student, when I fall back, when I step back and do a sort of self-inquiry, I find one adult in my life, in my past life, involved. I find something that I'm trying to project to the child. Or I'll find the child trying to project something which I used to project, and I am sort of responding in the same way that the older person used to respond in the past. So it is very important to have this self-awareness. Our minds are sort of programmed in a way that we just operate on autopilot. We just react to circumstances. So it is good to have the space in whatever we do to create the space, which I think Dave mentioned. Sometimes even at the airport, to practice to just step back when people are complaining and just be present with what is happening. I think when we bring in this presence into our relationship, then it's going to heal. From my own experience, this is what was happening. So the way that I learned to do this was through some mindfulness practices. I learned to meditate, but breath work was actually the first. I learned to do breath work, and I'm actually teaching some people breath work today. I've done a lot of breath work practices and trainings and all over the world. So because I really wanted to get used to this, I wanted to be self-aware. It's very difficult to be self-aware when you don't have a connection to yourself. And I found breath work as one of the ways to connect to myself. And the next one is really to connect to your intuition, to connect to your inner guidance. Because when there is something happening outside, maybe someone else is trying to do something, to tell you to do something which doesn't resonate with what is inside, even if you are not aware that there is this kind of resistance from within you, it exists. And it creates some kind of tensions. And these tensions can lead to traumas. They can lead to stress. They can lead to a lot of things. You just find yourself not being happy, not being satisfied with the way things are doing. It's your body telling you that something is off here. Your truth is different from the truth which is being given to you. And I say your truth because I don't know if there is something like the truth. We all have our truths. But how do you align your truth to what is happening? I feel that the best way is really to find your authentic self. And to find this authentic self is doing the inner work, going within ourselves, healing from some of the traumas, healing from remembering or discovering some of the patterns that are playing out from conditioning and some of the sort of practices, that laws that our social circles have made us to adopt, and it's ingrained in our minds. So when we are aware of this, I feel that it is the first step to empowerment. For me, empowerment is really giving power to the self. And when the self within us, when we have that power, this sort of autopilot changes. We can consciously make decisions. We can change some of our habits. We can decide to act and not act. But when we are moved by our hormones and emotions, it's very difficult. So I had to go through a very long journey of undoing some of those things, which I'm still actually undoing now, because old patterns are very stubborn, they show up. And so if we are consistent and choose some personal practices, for me, it was meditation, breath work, and yoga. For some people, it's hiking. We have different things that we do. It really doesn't have to be the same thing. So if you choose something which is your personal practice, which can help you to be more self-aware, then just practicing to be self-aware can help you to undo some of these things in the past, because then you see them happening. And the more that you connect to yourself as well, will help you to open up. The third, which I think Jenna mentioned in a way, is really how to deal with challenging situations. One of my best teachers, Eckhart Tolle, usually says that the world is not here to make us happy. The world is here to challenge us to evolve. And I really resonate with that, because most of the things that I've learned in my life have not been from pleasant situations, pleasant circumstances. The events that have really, really made me to be wiser were the bad events. The sort of stuff that we feel like this is too much. And these are the events that I can remember that they had a great impact in me, and I learned from them. But in order to learn from them, there is a certain way to respond to them. If we cannot respond by rejecting them, we have to respond by, first of all, accepting them the way they are. So if we have a mindset that this world is supposed to, everything is supposed to be fine and no one is supposed to suffer and so on, then we are always going to suffer, because the world is not here just to make us happy, because we are here to evolve. That's what I believe. We are here to become better persons. We are here to grow. And so that the process of growth comes with some challenges. So when things are thrown at me sometimes, I feel like, oh, this is coming, so what next? But before, it wasn't this way. Before, I used to be very frustrated. I used to be angry. I used to be like, why? And all that. So resisting some of these things can actually be very dangerous. Now, I usually say that I had the privilege of being born in this beautiful continent, because in as much as it is hard, it helped me to become wise. My childhood was very difficult. Probably I've seen people who had even more difficult childhoods than me. And then there you have a choice. I could have chosen to become bitter, to become angry and project it to everyone else, or blame everyone else for causing me problems, blame my parents for the maltreatment in childhood, which of course at some point I started thinking this way: what if my childhood was different? Then I would have been different now. But then when I came to a place of acceptance that these things happened for a purpose, I saw wisdom. There is a new consciousness that opened up for me, and I could see that some of the people that I've met around the world, some of the changes that I've done in the community came as a result of that experience. And so my life is not useful to this small me only. My life is useful to the whole world, to the community in which I live. And so if I stay in this world for 80, 90 years, or I don't know how many years, and leave, I wouldn't be remembered for the cars that I had or the beautiful houses that I had. I will be remembered for the contribution that I contributed to this world. And so for me, when I surrender, when I truly align and not fight against, of course, some of the things are so bad that you have to find a way to change them. But there are some which you can't just change. So what do? Are we going to keep fighting with the tensions and anger and everything within us? We just have to let go. And I'm saying let go, not like we just have to let go because it sounds so easy. That letting go is a very challenging process. And this is why in the course that I've developed, I see what they call purpose as something that unfolds to us in cycles. And that at some point, there is a purpose and the cycle starts and ends. And when the cycle starts, it's exciting. When it ends, it's time to let go. And when we don't realize that and let go, we become stuck in pain. I've realized that several times. I actually went to discover that I had like 7 cycles in my life, and they have almost similar patterns. They start this way, and so listening to the intuition will help because then we discover when it's time to let go. We cannot know this, and sometimes we just have to be present with what we call a bad situation and learn the lessons that we have to learn to move to the next stage. So as leaders, and with this strength that we all have, I feel that in order for this strength to really come out, we have to go through this process of struggle sometimes. But to know how to deal with this struggle, it's one of the ways that will help us to evolve to become better people. Because our world needs good leaders. Our world needs people who are more conscious, people who are more aware. And we are all sitting here, we have this in us. But then we can't just stay with what we have. We need to give it out there. We need to contribute. And I think we are all doing that in different ways. And we are all experiencing different cycles in our lives. And whatever is happening, the hope that I had that there is something more and that there is something worth living for, far bigger than my current circumstances. That feeling, that hope is what keeps us alive. That hope is what unfolds to us. Because when we lose that hope, we start thinking of suicide. Life becomes pointless. And we are all here because I think we have this hope. And through this beautiful program, this fellowship that we have, and the kind of leaders that I see in this program, I really have faith. I have a lot of trust that things are going to change, that whatever you do, whatever you try to put your hand in, is going to change. And we're not doing this just for little selves, we are doing this for the world. And so there has to be some compassion, there have to be some love. So this brings me to my kind of activism, which is the last part, which I called self-activism, right? There is be-activism and there is self-activism. I've found that the best way to change the world is to change myself. I think many great leaders have said this in different ways, but from my experience, I was very fortunate to have met one mentor who told me, you know what, just stop now, stop. You want to change the world, but you need to take a step back and work on yourself. And I had to just pause for a while. And it is this new consciousness, this new awareness that arose within me that helped me to do some of the things that I'm doing. And I remember last year in January, I was in India with this friend who is now a business partner, Philip. And Philip was like, I've heard about you. I've heard about this GLLI program that you're running in South Africa. But I want to tell you, my friend, what made you to start this program has served you enough. it was anger, it was the desire for justice. But maybe there is something more. How about you put in some love? And so from then I changed my mantra. It was no longer, I want to see justice, I want to see whatever. My mantra is, I'm doing what I'm doing for love. I'm doing it because I love to do it and I want to share this love. And so since I changed this mantra, the way that I relate to my work, the way that I relate to activism has shifted. It's more about what do I feel within me, because it is that which I feel within me that translates into any activity that I do, into any action. And I see beauty in that. There are so many things happening now in the organization which wasn't happening. And bringing in even new team members is exciting. And I actually exert less effort than I was when things were not going well. Things just happen. Someone phones, I want to do this, I want to help with this. And I feel that it is that alignment to say, when you open your hands and say, I want to serve, and you add in some love, you add in some compassion, something bigger than ourselves take over. And if the motive is really to change the world, then we have to step back. We have to keep ourselves away from it and really be open to love. Because love, for me, is a greater power than justice. It's a greater power than, justice will come eventually when we put in love, because it's important to have equity in the world. Some people can't be suffering and others are just getting everything. But if we all transform, if we all become empowered, if we all raise our consciousness, then I think everyone else is going to be happy in the world. And some of these differences, some of these challenges will sort out themselves because there'll be more compassion. There's one thing that we need in the world, at least two, which are similar, is love and compassion. And with this, there is no identity. Because if you take this color, you take this name, you take everything else, what is left is my essence. And I feel that the purest essence that we all have and that we all are is really what we are living for. We are living here to experience through this. And if we don't allow it to flourish, if we don't allow it to flower, then we are really keeping something so beautiful in a cage. So with these words, I just want to thank you all for listening and for sharing. I'm going to end here for now and just have time to interact with you a bit more. If you have any questions, if there's anything else that you want us to touch on, I will be very happy to interact with you. Thank you so much.